Audio story, The Shadow in the Mirror. They say the most terrifying thing isn't being betrayed by an enemy. The most terrifying thing is waking up every morning, kissing a person, making them breakfast, and laughing at their jokes for 10 years, only to realize that the entire time you were sharing a room with a complete stranger. My name is Marina. My story isn't a cliché tale about a lipstick stain on a collar or a suspicious text message. It's a story about how a professionally crafted lie can replace reality. If you're listening to this right now and you feel like something in your home is off, turn up the volume. Perhaps my experience will help you open your eyes before it's too late. Igor and I were together for 10 years. He was a surgeon, brilliant, sought after, a man with the golden hands you read about in the papers. We married when we were 25, and back then, our life seemed like a perfect blueprint. A cozy apartment, trips to the mountains, long conversations that lasted until dawn. Igor worked late, a lot. Complex surgeries, night shifts, emergency calls. "Difficult case, Marina, don't wait up," he would text. And I believed him. I believed every word, every letter. I was proud of him. I was that reliable anchor, the woman who always waited with a warm dinner and a kind word. Sometimes I even felt a twinge of guilt when talking to my friends. They complained about their husband's coldness or petty lies, while my Igor, he always came home with my favorite dark chocolate and that specific, tender gaze that I thought was meant for me alone. But 3 months ago, a glitch occurred in our perfect system. A tiny, almost invisible crack like a hairline fracture on a windshield that eventually shatters the whole view. In our house, the smart home system handled everything. Lights, locks, the garage, all managed through an app on my phone. That evening, Igor told me he was flying to a conference in another city for 3 days. I helped him pack his suitcase, tucked in his favorite shirts, and walked him to his taxi. 2 hours later, as I was settling into bed with a book, my phone gave a short, sharp ping. The notification read, "Garage door opened." I frowned. The garage was at our new country house. We had just finished building it and hadn't even moved the furniture in yet. We went there rarely, usually on weekends to check on the interior work. Probably a software glitch, I thought, but a strange, oily feeling of dread began to spread in my chest. I opened the app to close the door remotely and froze. The motion sensor in the living room of the country house was flashing. Activity detected. I don't know what came over me in that moment. A rational woman would have called her husband, but I called a taxi. The 40-minute drive in the dark, accompanied by the rhythm of the rain, felt like an eternity. I asked the driver to drop me off around the corner, away from the driveway. Quietly, trying not to let the gravel crunch under my feet, I approached the tall window of the living room. Inside, the lights were on. That same soft, warm light Igor always chose for cozy nights. On our new sofa, the one we picked out together for us, sat my husband. But he wasn't alone. Beside him sat a woman. She was painfully ordinary. Not a femme fatale from a movie, not a model. Just a woman with a messy bun wearing a bathrobe. My bathrobe, which I had left there the week before. But the most devastating blow was yet to come. On the rug at their feet played a child. A boy of about 5 with the same unruly hair as Igor. He was racing a toy car across the hardwood floor, shouting happily, "Daddy, look what I can do!" And my Igor, my serious, reserved surgeon, was laughing. He picked the boy up and kissed the top of his head with a natural, effortless love. In that moment, the air in my lungs turned to glass. I stood there in the dark, outside the window of my own dream, watching a stolen life built from the wreckage of my own. I didn't scream. I didn't burst through the door. Instead, a cold, terrifying mechanism of self-preservation kicked in. I took out my phone and started recording. 10 minutes of video. Every gesture, every look. I watched him pour her wine. I watched them discuss what color curtains to buy for the nursery. I returned to the city that same night. I didn't sleep. I sat in my kitchen and stared at a single point on the wall until the sun came up. The next morning, I hired a private investigator. I didn't need to know if he was sleeping with her, that was obvious. I needed to know who they were. 2 days later, I received a folder. Her name was Elena. She had been a nurse at the same hospital where he started his career 7 years ago. The boy was his son. But the most chilling part was the depth of the deception. Igor hadn't just found a mistress. He had created a complete parallel reality. He had a second set of social media accounts under a different name. In that other life, he wasn't the lead surgeon Igor Samoilov, he was Alexei, a business consultant. He had rented her an apartment in a different district, took them on vacations during the same dates he claimed to be at symposiums. He stole my time, my money, and my emotions to feed that second family. He used our joint savings to build a house where I was the intruder. As I looked at the photos of him with his son, I couldn't wrap my head around it. How can a human being lie so virtuously for years? How could he come to me, hug me, and not have a single muscle in his face twitch with guilt? The climax came when Igor returned from his business trip. He brought me a gift, a gold pendant. "Did you miss me, honey?" he asked, pulling me close. I smiled. My smile was now as fake as his entire existence. "Of course, dear. I have a surprise for you, too. Let's have a celebratory dinner at our new house, the one in the country." He froze for a split second. His pupils dilated, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, Marina, it's still dusty there. No furniture. Let's just go to a restaurant." "No, Igor, I've already prepared everything. The atmosphere there tonight will be special." We arrived there in the evening. The house was dark. We entered the living room, and I asked him to wait while I lit the candles. Instead, I turned on the television, the large screen he had secretly bought for his second family. A video appeared on the screen, the one I took from the window. The sound of the child's laughter filled the room, followed by Igor's voice on the recording. "I love you, Elena." Igor stood in the middle of the room, his face looking like a gray mask in the glow of the screen. "Marina, it's not what you think," he began, that classic pathetic phrase. "Isn't it?" I flicked on the lights. In the kitchen doorway stood Elena and the child. I'd invited them there an hour before our arrival. I had told Elena that I was the legal wife of Alexei and showed her the documents. She was in just as much shock as I was. She didn't know he was married. She believed he was divorced and lonely. We both stood there, two women staring at a man who thought he was a grand architect of lies. In an instant, he shriveled into a small, terrified creature whose world had just collapsed. I placed the divorce papers and the keys to the apartment on the table. "Igor," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but cutting like a blade. "Surgeons know that if a tumor cannot be cured, it must be cut out, at the root, without anesthesia. Tonight, I'm performing my final operation." 6 months have passed since then. I sold that house, I sold the apartment, I left the city where every corner reminded me of his deceit. Elena left him too. It turned out their happiness was built only on his money and his lies. Without the trust, they became strangers within a week. People often ask me, "How did you not notice? Were there no signs?" The signs were there. But we, as women, often choose a comfortable lie over a terrifying truth. We are afraid to destroy what we spent years building. But now I know for sure, silence in a house isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just the absence of truth. I'm no longer afraid of being alone. I'm only afraid of losing myself in the shadow of a stranger. And if you are listening to this right now, look into the eyes of the person next to you. Do you really know them? Or do you just believe the story they are telling you?